From bees to sweet corn, hops to potatoes, Idaho's agricultural landscape is diverse and defines a piece of the state's identity. Thanks for joining us for this Inside Ag special. I'm Hunter Funk. Today, we'll take a look back at the stories we covered over the summer season as we head into the fall. Well, September is peak harvest in the Gem State. We hit the road with the Department of Ag's Idaho Preferred program as they brought local chefs face to face with producers who shape Idaho's food scene. Take a look. Our road trip from Boise to the Magic Valley brought us here first. G+ Ranch.
Angus herd of cattle.
A living legacy rooted in generations of hard work.
Yes, I should tell you, I'm Celia Gould. I'm the third generation on this ranch. Our home ranch, my grandfather came in 1906 on a boxcar from Rocky Ford, Colorado. He stole away on a boxcar, and he and his brother came out when the Perrines and the Goodings and all of the Buells, Frank H. Buell, brought the water to the desert and turned this into what you see as you drove here.
The ranch helps fuel Idaho's beef industry and feed families across the country, producing for agri-beef.
We kind of outshine some competition in the fact that every time you're going to eat that steak, you know what to expect, and that's what brings people back in time and time again to our commodity brands.
They've been partnering with family ranchers like the Goulds for decades and pioneered Wagyu cattle in the Northwest.
And it's just kind of humbling knowing that this is really where it all starts. And it all starts with independent families.
But it's not just the cattle they're raising out here.
I'm generation number 3, and the most important crop we grow right here is the generations. So we're hoping we've got lots more generations to stay in the business.
I'm Zane Gould's, Celia Gould's grandson, and what I normally do around here is help out my dad and work with people named Fabi and Dryson.
My name is Maddie Gould, and I enjoy the moving cows and the horses bit of the ranch.
She will go out and help gather cattle, and those are 18-mile days on horseback, and she gets the job done. So she's the real deal. We've got to have somebody that wants to continue, and it's not an easy life. It looks like an easy life. It looks pretty glamorous oftentimes when you see the cattle out on the nice green grass and that, but you don't see what goes on behind the scenes that are the hard days. That being said, I wouldn't trade it for any other life. It's the best life I could hope for.
Our next stop, Thousand Springs Mill, and Tim Corney grows and runs the certified organic milling facility.
We grow beans, ancient grains. We got corn goes back a couple thousand years, popcorn, and we grow it 8 miles away. And then we harvest it. We come and clean it, polish it. We put it in for retail, and for some wholesales. We send some product over to Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. Some of our organic wheat goes in soy sauce. And then we warehouse packaging for Albertsons and Winco and a lot of major brands in Warehouse 3.
So right there, that's about 3,000 pounds of kidney beans that came out of the field that we're getting prepped to go clean.
We also make alcohol mash for their extra grains that don't go into high quality flour and bread flour and other products. That extra wheat is going into regenerative certified alcohol brands like Farmer's Gin and American Harvest. I think that what we need to do is kind of adopt the European style food system. They have less preservatives, higher quality grains, and they put that first.
Corney says they don't use pesticides and plant sunflowers for the bee population. Next, we went to Riverence, a fish farm, for an aquaculture facility tour.
We do about 27 million pounds of rainbow trout a year. We manage everything from egg to distribution. So we have 4 brood facilities, 3 here in Idaho that ship eggs out to our farms that grow up.
They are working to revamp the trout industry, as it hasn't been as popular over the years, and are competing with cheaper fish from overseas. Their goal is to make it flourish again and say people are already chomping at the bit, as they've seen strong growth over the last few years. And behind it all is Idaho Preferred. working to build relationships within the culinary industry and connect them to Idaho producers.
So we promote, we connect, and we educate Idaho producers to help them scale their marketplace. But really importantly, we help consumers and others in the community understand where their food comes from.
And for more details on locally sourced produce and food, you can visit idahopreferred.com. There you can find what products are in season and how to connect with Idaho growers. Well, when it comes to summertime staples, there's one fruit that always ends up in the cooler or on the picnic table. It's watermelon. And we caught up with one of the largest watermelon growers in the Northwest who showed us the process of getting the fruit on the shelves, which, to be clear, is no picnic. In the Hagerman Valley, watermelon harvest
We had a warmer than usual spring,
came a week early.
which ultimately leads the crops to grow a little bit faster. And so we started record early for our company on July 3rd this year.
Which means the melon gets an additional week of sale. But how do they know when it's time to harvest?
We have what we call a cutter that comes through, checks the watermelon for ripeness, and then cuts the stem on the ones that are ripe and ready today. So here are the watermelons that the cutters have decided are ready to go. And so we like to cut them open every so often and do a quality check and make sure that they look good. They are really good quality this year.
Once they determine which melons are ready, they put them belly up so the next crew can begin.
They pick the watermelons up and they put them on a conveyor belt, which then puts them up onto a trailer. And from there, they're transported from the trailer to the packing house.
It's a labor-intense crop. They harvest 600 acres worth of watermelon. It takes about 4 rounds spaced out a week apart to finish a field. That means from start to finish, a single field can take a month to pick.
It's all done by hand. It's a lot of really hard work. And we're always really appreciative to our employees who are willing to come out and work hard in the 100-degree heat, throwing watermelons all day.
Then it's time for these melons to roll to the packing house, where the trucks unload.
We have a great resource here of the natural spring water that the Hagerman Valley provides. And we're able to put the produce in that. It cools the produce and then conveys it along to the sorters that pick it up. Sort it out according to size, and then we can pack it in the bins.
The average time from farm to store is about a week, but here they say it can be as soon as 1 to 2 days. In 3 months, 2,000 semi-loads of fresh produce will be shipped out across the Northwest.
Portland, Seattle, Salt Lake, Boise.
So since we're talking with the experts, how do you pick the best one at the grocery store?
Tap it, and if you get a higher ringing sound, that's an indication that it's not very ripe. If you get a really low, hollow thud, that's an indication that it's overripe. So you're looking for a nice medium sound.
They're not just tapping melons. They're up 100 acres this year in watermelon fields, so they're also tapping into even bigger markets.
Putting our name out there for more than just potatoes.
Did you know Canyon County is a global hub for seed production? And this time of year, harvest is in full swing. For more than a century, one family-owned company has helped make the Treasure Valley a world leader in sweet corn seed. We looked into the processing side of it all. Crookham Company has been rooted in Caldwell for more than a century.
Well, my great-grandfather actually started here in popcorn. Back in 1911 is when he first started the company. And then it exploded into seed production, breeding, marketing, and just evolved over time.
And George Crookham, who grew up at this facility, knows the industry inside and out.
I'm 4th generation here at Crookham Company. This is our 114th year. We've been doing sweet corn seed production longer than anybody else in the world. Long time in popcorn and onions as well, too.
Canyon County produces 65% of the world's sweet corn seed. The region ranks first in the United States for the onion seed production, and if you've ever enjoyed popcorn at a movie theater, there's about a 50% chance it originated from Idaho because of its popcorn seed production.
I can't tell you how many countries our seed goes to, but I know it's 80 to 100 plus.
All of those seeds are grown, and many of them are brought here.
Our crops are onions, popcorn, and sweet corn. Onion harvest is over right now. We're processing the seed, getting ready to ship it out all over the world. Popcorn, we're in the mix of drying it, shelling it, cleaning it. Same with sweet corn.
He says the Treasure Valley grows the best seed because the area is a high mountain desert with adequate water, which makes quality and consistency world-renowned. And in peak harvest season, he says this year continues to prove that, as it's been a good year for crops.
We didn't hit that high peak of heat in July and August. That can really affect our pollination, and without pollination, you don't get seed.
The seed industry contributes nearly $1.5 billion annually to Idaho's economic footprint, with Canyon County producing 50 species and hundreds of varieties of seeds that are shipped to nearly 120 counties. Of course, sweet corn is one of the largest contributors. These seeds aren't just another crop, it's the starting point for everything else that grows.
Seed is to agriculture what computer chips are to computers or technology today. Without the seed, you really don't have agriculture. And in those seeds, like computer chips, we have all the DNA code in there for that seed to resist disease, to have all the nutrients it needs to fulfill the grower's needs and feed the world.
Despite its success, the industry faces challenges. Urban growth and land use changes have led to a decline in seed production acreage, particularly in sweet corn seed. 15 years ago, Canyon County produced 85% of the world's sweet corn seed. Today, that figure has dropped to 65%. It's a statistic he says is concerning for Idaho, especially the Treasure Valley as it continues to grow.
Now, I do think we can grow and protect farmland at the same time. But otherwise, we keep going the direction we're going. We're going to build into insolvency. It's as simple as that. That would be my biggest concern about the future of Crookman Company and my family in the seed business in the Treasure Valley.
His hope is that more people learn about agriculture and talk with local leaders about ways to protect all crops, because he believes it's important for Idaho to remain a global hub for seed production. And it's a legacy worth celebrating.
Pretty darn proud of the industry and of course of my people and our company.
All right, it's an issue facing farms across the country, and here in Idaho, who will take over the farm? Well, coming up, how one local family is passing the torch to the next generation. From sweet corn to pumpkins, all of it makes its way to the farm stand at Whistle Farms. But behind those colorful displays is a bigger story. Small farms are fighting to stay in business. We look at how the next generation may be the key to keeping small farms alive. At first glance, it looks like any other family farm. Pumpkins turning orange, sweet corn ready for the stand. It's a rhythm of farming that's grown fresh food for more than 100 years. But stay a while, and you'll notice something different. The newest farmhand doesn't just carry pliers, she also carries a phone.
My dad just said that our pickup had what?
It's got the 240 air conditioner. You roll the two windows down and go 40.
Morgan Escombe-Whistle is now
farm manager, but we joke around and call it chief farm officer.
She grew up here. A farm kid who once left this dirt behind after her parents encouraged she and her siblings to chase their own dreams.
There was always this idea of go and search what's going to really drive you. There was never any pressure to stay. So me and my sisters ended up all leaving, all going to college elsewhere, all starting careers elsewhere. And we remained involved, but it was at more of a minimal amount compared to what I do now.
She thought going to a big city was where she belonged, as a big brain director or ballroom dancer. But somehow, the farm found her again.
I think when you are born to parents who are farmers, it's an honor, right? And it's very rare. And I started thinking more and more about what a shame it would have been if I would have never come back. And I just felt some deeper calling. And after I did, I think it connects with a lot of my other values and passions. So I just kind of went for it, no plan, and that's about where I'm at now.
And this time, she brought her skills she learned along the way.
He is wearing a custom, just kidding, thrifted plaid button-up and ready-to-wear Wranglers and his Justin boots.
Right after I came out of college, I went into content production and a bunch of other things. It'd always been something that I was doing. And I didn't necessarily think I'm passionate. I don't necessarily think I'm good at it. I just started doing it for my parents because I see that they have a really genuine story, and one that is not always talked about, and one that's being lost, especially in Idaho, especially southwest Idaho.
Thousands now watch the Whistle family work the fields. A farm that once fought quietly to hang on now publicly shares a story similar to other small farms.
Small to mid-sized farms, they're not going to survive because there's so many economic pressures, political pressures, that everything is stacked up against them. And I was thinking about it last night, is everything is so flavorful right now, and we're in season, we're getting the most flavorful, nutrient-dense food ever. And there could be a time where people don't know that flavor and that food anymore because small to mid-sized family farms are dying.
She came back because she didn't want her family's hard work to disappear. And her posts, they're not just content. They're a lifeline. They bring in more customers. And maybe, just maybe, the reason this century-old farm will see another season.
I've realized that people have these skill sets that are disappearing, and to be able to carry it on is so beautiful. Though I always say, like, be prepared to do it. You know, you're not going to walk in and have everything be perfect and have everything go well. Like, you just have to be, hopefully, if you're going to do it, you're in a position where you can. And luckily, I am in a position where I currently can. And so I'm very grateful for that.
Well, dealing with the ups and downs is just part of business. Coming up, how Idaho hop growers are adjusting to less demand amid a trend among young people. Did you know Idaho is ranked number 2 for hops production in the United States? An industry that was thriving before COVID now has hop growers in our state making changes, cutting acres and managing overproduction. One Idaho hop grower walked us through the rise and recent fall of hop demand and what it means for the future. Over in Wilder, you'll find rows of towering trellises where hops climb toward the late summer sun.
So as they grow, which they have done this since the 10th of May, they've reached the top and then they fill out and finish their growth for the season. As you can see, these have bloomed, and that is what turns into the cone, and the cone is what holds the oil, and that is what the production of hops is about.
They're grown for one purpose: flavoring beer.
So it's all based off of oil content and oil production.
And for the last decade, business was booming.
I was able to start growing hops approximately 12 years ago, and there was an incline in demand for acreage. Since then, we have leveled out, and now we're seeing a decline just because of many different things that have happened in the world with COVID and war and inflation.
Those global events hit home here in Idaho, America's second largest hop producing state.
60% of the hops in the U.S. are exported. So there's a major 3-state growing area, which includes Washington, Idaho, and Oregon.
But global supply chains aren't the only issue. Growers say what people choose to pour in their glass is changing too.
And there's also been a drive from the administration to be more health conscious, as the younger generations seem to try and be more health conscious. So I think alcohol is one of the things that we'll see a decline in usage.
When beer sales slip, so does the need for those oils, leaving farmers with more crop than the market can handle.
We had a good run for 10 years. But now we're in a spot where we have overproduction, and so we're all having to cut back on our acres and hopefully clean the system out of the overages.
Part of the shift, growers say, is generational. Today's younger drinkers crave variety and often skip the 6-pack altogether.
I think that the younger generation isn't quite as brand loyal. They're willing to try new things, and they want to experience different forms of alcohol, which It could be seltzers, it could be fruity malted beverages.
Though there are signs of hope in new markets.
Well, hops are still being used in the non-alcoholic beers, which is wonderful because it is one bright spot that we have seen.
With harvest approaching,
the last week of August and runs through September. We try and be done by the 25th to the 30th of September.
pretty standard from your traditional row crop.
Yeah, it takes a long time because this is very labor intense.
The focus now is on finding balance, matching what's grown to what's actually consumed.
Just hope that we can normalize our production and be able to follow the trends and produce accordingly so that we can pass this on to our future generations.
And while fewer acres may be planted, Idaho growers say their commitment to the crop and the industry hasn't changed. But they say if you're feeling festive for rather beer or non-alcoholic beer, drinking them are a great way to support your Idaho farmers. Connecting farmers and ranchers to what's impacting them. After the break, how a radio station is aiming to keep growers informed on the industry. Welcome back to this Inside Ag special. Farming and agriculture is more than growing crops and livestock, although that's a big part of it. Community and connection plays a major role. AM radio, for decades, has been the lifeline for rural America. But in recent years, AM stations have been going silent, including one in eastern Idaho. Well, we show you it's back on the air with a new mission to serve the people who keep Idaho's ag industry running. In the early 1900s, if you wanted to know what was going on, you kicked on the radio and switched to your AM channel.
From cash to crops, it's KNBL, Idaho Falls, Farm Country 1260.
It connected rural towns to the rest of the world with live news, sports, and music. But the rise of FM and streaming pushed many AM stations off the dial, including this one in Idaho Falls.
When I started back in March, this station was actually what we call dark. It had been taken off the air by my predecessor, from what I understand, mainly for business reasons, but probably cost-cutting measures from what I can gather. And so when I started in March, I basically had till the end of June to decide whether to sell it, donate it to some other entity, or turn it back into the FCC.
Well, instead of letting it fade away, General Manager Kevin O'Rourke brought it back.
Timeless country, timely ag. You're listening to the station that works as hard as you do. Farm Country 1260.
This time focusing on agriculture and classic country.
I just noticed that no one in the market was really doing anything to service the ag community, and especially in a smaller, more rural American market where ag is huge. It just works, it fits, and the station sounds incredible. We love what's happening so far.
Listeners can access old country music.
Waking up with the world of ag. It's the Daybreak Ag Report.
Between 5 a.m. and noon, there will be daily ag reports. And in the afternoons, there will be rodeo reports from around the region.
Day one of the Northern Livestock Video Auction is in the books.
We catch people, in the truck or the shop or in the kitchen at lunch. And the station's going to continue to evolve. We've only been on the air a little over a month, and we were in a big time hurry to get it on before the deadline that we were up against with the FCC.
They also have plans to take the radio to other online platforms as well. O'Rourke says the goal is to keep farmers informed on the issues that impact their bottom line.
Our belief and our job is to really try to help every farmer and rancher run a better operation, as profitable as possible and as well informed as possible.
The radio signal should reach from Pocatello to Rexburg, but listeners have even picked it up as far away as American Falls. And if successful, it could grow across the state as the years progress. In an industry where family farms are shrinking, he's optimistic the signal can help keep the next generation connected to agriculture.
My hope is that through working with some of the other organizations like 4-H and FFA, that we can find some of those young people and develop them into better leaders too, and continue to have people in our region kind of fight for private, family-owned and smaller operations and keep that element of ag thriving and growing instead of holding on for dear life,
Farm Country 1260.
Coming up, they may seem like a pest to some, but they are like mini superheroes when it comes to protecting agriculture. We're talking about bees, a look at a new pollinator garden aimed at helping their populations thrive.
What's good for the herd is good for the bird.
For years, ranchers and conservationists have debated whether cattle grazing could coexist with sage-grouse habitat. Now, a decade-long study may have the answer. We look at what researchers found and what it could mean for the future of grazing and the West.
The question is, are they compatible or not?
Across 75,000 acres of sagebrush in southern Idaho, a question was asked: can cows and sage-grouse share land without harming one another?
The number of grouse in the world have decreased, especially sage-grouse in our part of the world. Been a pretty steady decrease since about the time they started measuring in the 1960s.
And more than 10 years ago, researchers began the quest of answering that.
They identified several simplot BLM grazing allotments that contained leks with high numbers that also had a season of use in the spring, which allowed us the opportunity to participate in this study.
Led by the University of Idaho, the Bureau of Land Management, Idaho Fish and Game, and the USGS, the research tracked how livestock grazing impacts sage-grouse nesting. Researchers compared grazed pastures to untouched ones. And now, we fast forward 10 years and get the findings, which were surprising to some, but reassuring to many.
So after 10 years, we finally have the science and the data to prove what ranchers have been seeing for decades. Grouse and cows can live together successfully. What the study found was that livestock grazing did not have any detrimental effect to the nesting success of grouse within spring grazed allotments, and that removal of livestock from an area did not result in a higher success rate for the sage grouse.
Turns out sage grouse nest under thick brush, an area cows typically avoid. And the length of the grass doesn't impact the nesting process.
Grouse are not walking around and trying to look for ungrazed pastures. There was really no difference in nest density in grazed or ungrazed pastures, which indicates they're not selecting ungrazed places. And so that was also, I think, pretty interesting.
They say they study grouse because it's an indicator of what's going on in the rangeland ecosystem. And now that the study's wrapped, the focus shifts to restoration, using that same science to guide fire prevention and habitat recovery.
Making sure that we have a quick fire response to areas where there is critical sage-grouse habitat, I think is critically important. And then ensuring that we're getting the right funding put towards restoration post-fire to see these ecosystems come back and support sagebrush habitat for all sagebrush obligate species into the future is critically important.
The answers from the research are creating a clear path forward to how ranchers can approach livestock grazing, and opens the door for more land opportunity.
Grazing is an important ecological process, but it's also economically important. It's the backbone of all these rural communities that make Idaho, Idaho. Ranching is an important part of it, and now we've shown that if we do it well, we can do both grazing and have healthy rangelands and healthy wildlife. So to me, that is the win-win out of this.
And researchers say they'll be analyzing the data from this study for years to come, looking deeper into nest success, insect populations, and long-term rangeland health. We can see those get published over the next several years. Well, there is a buzz of excitement in Parma. What once was an overgrown patch of weeds, now a pollinator paradise. University of Idaho staff, master gardeners, and volunteers all came together, and we look at why it's so important. It took a hive of activity to bring this project to life. A brand new pollinator garden at the University of Idaho Extension Office in Parma, thanks to a $10,000 grant from Dr. Barbara Petty.
What goes into something like this is a lot. We, number one, invited the Canyon County Master Gardeners.
I've been team lead for about 7, 8 years now.
We had Parma staff help out a bunch with this project.
I participated in designing the garden and the concept idea of bringing this garden to this area.
And then we had to source all the plants and irrigation to prep the site.
The group of nearly 40 people cleared out rocks, brush, and trees to make way for more than 130 pollinator-friendly plants, irrigation, and even bee hotels. And while you may ask, why are people buzzing about this? Well, it's because it's protecting our agriculture.
They're critical for us. I mean, we don't realize how much we rely on bees, but if we eat fruit, drink milk and everything, I mean, 75% of the food we consume, it's because of the bees. So they're critical in our environment.
Idaho's native pollinator species helps home gardens, flowering plants, and ag operations across the state. Butterflies, moths, beetles, flies, and primarily bees need habitat, nectar resources, and spaces to survive. According to U of I, it's estimated that more than 1/3 of every bite of food humans consume is thanks to native and managed pollinators. Insects and agricultural operations rely on each other for pollination services. And without this, Idaho's agriculture systems would see a direct decrease in yield and income.
The importance of this can't be understated. Here in Idaho, we're over 720 native bee species. So everyone thinks of the honeybee, the alfalfa leaf-cutting bee, maybe a bumblebee. We have way more bee species in Idaho than that. Probably 90% of them are going to be ground nesters. So we need to preserve that habitat and have nectar resources for them to forage on.
And there's a science of what kind of plants to add to a pollinator garden and what goes around those plants.
If you're dealing with insects, you need to give them food for the whole season, and different insects come out at different times. Right now we looked at the Maximilian sunflower, which is a late bloomer. We have some asters that are late bloomers. So, this is all something, if anybody thinks about incorporating into their home garden, make sure you have a wide selection of plants.
The Advanced Master Gardener also says group similar plants together to make it easier for the insects to get their resource, and leave a section of bare ground for bees to nest, because most are ground nesting, and mulch and bark prevent that.
All of our bees are basically nesting in the soil, around the ag fields, around their house, and that we need to preserve them. We need to reduce pesticide use as a whole, as a society, and to plant these pollinator plants that are providing those nectar resources for their survival in the long run.
And at the Extension office, it also allows the staff there to test out different soil and flower mixes to see what does best. And are you working on your green thumb? Because the Canyon County Master Gardener Program hosts classes. Something to check out there. All right, coming up, a discovered link between Idaho's most iconic crop and tomatoes. Why the DNA of potatoes might not be so far off from the red fruit. Idaho is world famous for our potatoes, but after newly released research, maybe we should be bragging about our tomatoes? Well, a new study finds the potato's family tree is actually rooted with tomato in its DNA. We look at the study and what this means for researchers here in Idaho.
Potato and spuds. I guess tater.
Potato or potato.
And tomato is definitely tomato.
No matter how you or a new study says it, we know the potato is a piece of Idaho's pride.
Research into the origins of potato has been going on for a very, very long time since potato became an important food crop.
We also know that today there are 107 wild potato species across the Americas. And the thing that all potato plants produce is this: underground tubers, or what we know as potatoes. It's a way for a plant to store starch and handle the seasons. But what we didn't know was where the whole potato lineage came from. But now scientists do. And it took root nearly 9 million years ago. After a new study published in Cell finds our spuds have a little tomato in its bloodline.
The tomato plant with beautiful red fruit derived from pollination of flowers is strikingly different than the potato plant with potentially small green fruit or no fruit.
Not twins, but more like cousins. Researchers say the potato's ancestors were basically a mashup between a tomato plant and this, E. tuberosum, a species of wild potato that doesn't have tubers.
Today's potato comes mostly, it's 40% from this wild E. tuberosum plant and 30% from tomato.
When they think that hybridization event happened, it was like about 10 million, 9 million years ago. One thing that was quite kind of interesting is they think that's when sort of seasons happened, they started to be regular seasons on the planet. So maybe that's why they developed the tuber, because, you know, to survive through that off season, perhaps. Maybe that was the selection pressure there. The other thing that this study suggested is when the Andes kind of increased in elevation, they called it the sudden uplift. So that might have forced sort of evolution of the potato as well in that instance.
When you look at the potato industry as a whole, and you look at maybe what might be the greatest hybrid ever created in this potato hybridization event, I think that's exciting to celebrate.
It's a study all of these University of Idaho researchers have kept their eyes on, because these findings help guide their research about plant development and disease control.
So this is why this study, looking at the relationship between tomatoes and potatoes, is kind of exciting for us in a way, because we know that the disease often comes in on tomatoes into home gardens. That can transmit into our commercial potato production. So we're always kind of aware of that relationship between tomatoes and potatoes and how that translates to disease risk.
Which means finding a way to get reliable seeds for breeding potatoes resistant to disease and a changing climate, and give better insights for growers on creating a greater tater.
That connection is essential to the food that we eat today.
And the UI Extension Office in Parma is also on high alert for farmers and a great resource. There, they're able to detect airborne diseases that come from tomatoes and move to potatoes. And they're able to put out alerts to farmers to ensure they don't lose their crops to disease. So maybe it's time we say we're famous for our tomatoes that became potatoes. Idaho's most iconic crop is also getting some attention on cars. Here's a look at Idaho's newest new plate that's actually a classic while helping farmers. They say everything that once was old becomes new again. And in Idaho, that includes potatoes. More specifically, potato license plates. Let's take it back to
1928 was when the first stylized plates came into being in 1928.
Before then, license plates across the United States just featured the name of the state and the plate number. But Idaho paved the way for embracing what it's known for.
Well, Idaho was the first one to have a plate that recognized like their main product, which is potatoes at the time. And the plate included a large potato image spanning the design, which received mixed public feedbacks.
Mixed feedback at the time, but
in the 1950s, that's when this one came out.
A black and white design. And while no actual potato on this one, it still celebrated the state's commodity that was leading the nation in total production.
Its popularity has kind of ebbed and flowed, but lately it's been very popular with people in Idaho. They're very proud of their potato heritage and the story that goes with it.
Several decades later, the Idaho Potato Commission and legislators knew this spud had more mileage left.
This is a bill that is being brought due to high demand.
The legislature this year approved the vintage plates by an overwhelming combined vote of 99-1. Released in June, it's already a hot potato.
So far, they've sold, I think, a couple thousand or so, yeah.
There's also another type of retro plate that's all white with teal lettering that's available. But a retro specialty plate comes with a bigger price tag. In addition to regular registration fees, the plates are $70 and the renewal fee is $50. But it's for a good cause.
The revenue helps, some of it helps fund some of our Idaho Potato Commission research projects that we're doing for our growers and some of the projects that we're working on, and then also some a pretty good percentage of it goes to help with our highways here in the state of Idaho.
That research includes better seed varieties, disease resistance, and potato storage.
We're just always trying to give them a little bit of an edge in their marketplace and with their planting, growing, storage, all that stuff.
The commission was founded in 1937 to promote Idaho potatoes, and having spuds on the state's license plate helps accomplish that mission.
People are proud of their state and the history in Idaho, and especially the potatoes plant, and it's just a way to show your support and acknowledge our heritage here in Idaho.
Every summer, fairgrounds throughout Idaho come alive. Livestock lines, the barn, and the kids who have prepared all year for the show ring put their best boots forward. We caught up with participants in this year's Canyon County Fair.
15, now 16, and 16, 16, now 17.
Today I am showing my 2025 market lamb. This is Stu. He weighs 127 pounds. I've had him since April. He's been an awesome lamb this year. I really enjoy watching the community come together and be able to see what these kids have been doing all year.
My steer weighs 15 pounds, and his average daily gain is 4.2 pounds a day. Then we raced him to be like this.
And now 12.
You get to network yourself really well. There is a nice paycheck that comes out of it, but also just spending time with those peers that do get to help you along the way and seeing all my efforts come together into one big piece.
Such dedication. Well, thanks for joining us for this Inside Ag special. We'll see you next time.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.